Senate Bill 75 and bills like it are bills that are meant to protect children. It's a bill to safeguard their innocence and a bill to secure their future. This bill repeals the sunset on the Save Adolescents from Experimentation, or SAFE Act, and it also eliminates the grandfather clause. I was proud to be one of the authors of the SAFE Act in 2023. I was a state representative at the time. I was proud to be the individual that was able to stand up on the House floor and make the motion that we send that bill to the governor, and I was proud that the governor signed it into law. This bill is now the law of the land in Missouri. It's protecting children from transgender drugs and surgeries. The sunset that was attached to it on the Senate side only applied to the drugs portion of the bill. This legislation that I have would remove that sunset. The sunset may have been added in the Senate as a way to get the bill passed, but if it's good enough to protect kids today, it should be good enough to protect kids 2 years from now, 10 years from now, and forever. Children should not be subject to sex change drugs and surgeries, period. The children of our state are our greatest asset for the future and should be protected. Let's be very clear here today, in case anyone doesn't understand, which I think most, if not all of us do. The SAFE Act is now law. It is now illegal in Missouri for kids to be subjected to sex change drugs and surgeries. The SAFE Act has been upheld in court on more than one occasion. This bill simply removes the sunset and the grandfather clause, things that should have never been there in the first place. I would appreciate your help as we work to keep children safe from experimentation and exploitation. I object to the term gender-affirming care. I believe if we wanted to affirm these kids, we would not tell them they were born in the wrong bodies. Please work with me to make this law permanent, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Arnie C. Acedino, State Public Advocate. I submitted my testimony this morning online for all three bills. I'm in support of all three bills, removing the expiration of the law from the state statute. I believe in protecting the children of our state, all across the state. I believe that children need to remain as children and the sex that they were born as. When you're 18, you can make your own decisions and pay for your own expenses. But I believe that we have an obligation in Senate Bill 26, Senate Bill 75, and Senate Bill 76 to protect children and to ensure their safety. And for those reasons, I'm in full support of this bill. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next in favor?
Good morning, Madam Chair. For the record, James Harris representing Do No Harm Action, here to testify in support of Senate Bill 75. We were supportive of the effort 2 years ago. That's been debated by this legislature and is the law. Removing the sunset makes sense. And I would like to thank the sponsor or the witness on the last bill about how brave it was when she stepped forward. If you have not read her affidavit from 2 years ago, I read every word. Read it. You'll go, how could a research medical institution be this willy-nilly on stuff? And it was so disturbing. And she's been attacked personally, professionally, and what she said has been proven correct. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Are you also in favor of Senate Bill 26?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next in favor?
Good morning again, Madam Chair. I won't reiterate my prior testimony, just here to reiterate that I'm in support also of the Senate Bill 75 on behalf of the Missouri American Academy of Medical Ethics. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Next in favor?
Lisa Panett with Armorvine, and we just want to go on record with support in all three of these bills and grateful to every one of the sponsors, each one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next in favor?
My name is Timothy Faber, and I would also like to speak in favor of all three bills. In relation to the one that was just being discussed, Senate Bill 26, and the current one, Senate Bill 75, I would like to remind the committee that the Nuremberg Code requires that the subject be able to give legal consent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Thank you for your time. Next in favor?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Dr. Guillermo Villatrueba for the Missouri Catholic Conference, representing all 4 Roman Catholic dioceses in the state. We would like to go on the record in support of Senate Bills 26, 75, and 76, and commend the sponsors for bringing them up for debate. The Missouri Catholic Conference supports these bills because they would ensure that minors continue to be protected from life-altering cross-sex hormones and puberty-blocking drugs that, based on a false understanding of human nature, attempt to change their sex. We are concerned that minors are not capable of giving truly informed consent to dangerous treatment that could lead to irreversible consequences, such as infertility and lifelong dependence on costly hormone therapies with significant side effects. Medical and surgical treatment for gender dysphoria denies the fundamental truth about the human person being created male and female in the image and likeness of God. As Pope Francis has stated in his encyclical letter Laudato Si, learning to accept our body, to care for it, and to respect it to its fullest meaning is an essential element of any genuine ecology. Young people struggling with gender dysphoria are loved by God and possess the same inherent dignity that all persons do. They deserve help that heals rather than harms. And using cross-sex hormones or puberty-blocking drugs for the purpose of a so-called gender transition can and will only inflict harm and cause suffering. Only when those who struggle with gender dysphoria are able to accept their bodies and their vocation as women or men will they be on the true path of freedom and happiness. So we urge you to vote do pass on these 3 bills, and if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to take them.
Thank you for your testimony. Make sure you fill out a witness form and leave it there at the desk. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, in favor? How are we doing on time? Going once.
Hi, I'm Chris White. I'm just going on record for Liberty Link of Missouri that we're in favor of all 3 of these bills, and we want to thank you very much for bringing this forward. Again, I prayed for all of you this morning and for all of those who oppose this bill to really take in and have ears to hear and teachable spirits for the ones that came forward, such as Jamie Reed, and ones that were here originally in 2023 who had transition surgery and hormones. They regretted it. If they could really pay attention to that, because in 2023, senators as well as people listening left the room or mocked or laughed, and if they could really pay attention to the ones that are standing up here in support of this bill also. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Next in favor?
My name is Michael Compton, and I just want to go on the record for ACT for Missouri. We support all 3 of these bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Make sure you leave your witness form there on the desk. Thank you for your time. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. All right. Next in favor? Going once? Going twice? All right. With the conclusion of those in favor, we will now hear those here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 75. Just a reminder to keep your comments 2 minutes or less.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being willing to hearing from us today. My name is Ben Green. I am a resident of St. Louis, and I'm here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 75. I am an openly transgender man. I transitioned at the age of 15, was not able to access medical care until I was 19 years old. And beneath all of that, behind all of that story, I have something in common with all of you, which is that I am an American citizen, and I am deeply concerned about government overreach, including into my doctor's office, decisions that patients are making with their parents, their doctors, their mental health care providers. When we are all in agreement about what the best individual course of treatment is for a young person, politicians should not be reaching into those offices to insist they know better, knowing none of the details about that specific young person and what their specific plan of care may be. Every single patient has unique needs and challenges, which is why there are rigorous standards created and agreed upon by every single major medical organization in the United States and many more internationally, including a recent publication of the French National Medical Consensus on Care for Trans Youth, which came out strongly in support of access to this health care when appropriate. This blatant government overreach has already had significant consequences, and data suggests over $1 billion in annual household income has been lost based on Missourians leaving their homes in pursuit of safety for themselves and their families. So I urge you to reconsider this legislation targeting a minuscule group of people and focus on issues that are actually hurting Missourians, hurting Missouri children, and vote no on SB 75. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are you familiar with this testimony of those that are in favor of the bill where their doctor has been incentivized, or the medical field has been incentivized to promote this kind of treatment? And is that a concern to you at all?
I didn't hear anything in the specific testimony before me of incentivization in terms of saying, you have to do this. That is not something that is a major concern to me. And in fact, having a constant barrage of hearings like this, of death threats to many major hospitals and healthcare providers, that is de-incentivization, right? The world is constantly telling these kids, don't be trans. It's telling these providers, you are doing something terrible. There is a constant societal pressure to say, hey, we don't want to support this, whether it's coming from a religious perspective, a conservative scoring points perspective, or something else. But I do not see a significant social pressure to say you have to provide this care.
Well, you're just saying that there's pressure on for the conservatives to do some kind of score, to have these kinds of conversations. And I'll just speak for myself. But when you see the statistics that kids on the autism spectrum are especially susceptible to this kind of ideology, when you see that doctors are incentivized, when you hear from parents that they were told that the blood of their children would be on their hands if they didn't go forward with this kind of medical malpractice is what I'm going to call it, it is a concern. So it's not to say that we're here trying to score socially or anything else, but we are trying to insert ourselves into the conversation to say, when it comes to minors, are we doing the right thing? When you see that in Europe, they have reversed these kinds of procedures.
In certain countries.
It's still legitimate, is it not? It's a concern. And so to have this kind of public dialogue is the reason why we do exist and why we are here. I'm grateful for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness?
So again, I want to preface this by saying I recognize we're asking questions that you wouldn't normally have to answer, and so don't feel like you need to, or if you can pass it off. But one of the things that I've learned from the previous witness as a provider, the process that is gone through for this. So you shared that you chose, or you were able to transition as an adult, but you started seeking care when you were younger.
Yeah, so I realized that I was transgender when I was around 15, was when I finally got access to the language to describe that experience. And I was looking for that care, and because of parental support, was not able to access that until I was much older. And that period of my life in which I knew what I needed and wasn't able to access it was, I was a bystander in my own life. I did not hug my friends. I showered with the lights off. I was really pretty tremendously miserable, knowing that I was just waiting for the moment when I was going to get to start living, which was when I was able to access that gender-affirming care.
So you weren't targeted or marketed, or somebody
No,
said, hey,
I was
come
constantly
buy my
getting
products
bullying, or doctors saying, no, you don't want to do that, or just like a lot of people who were telling me, hey, this is a bad thing. It's a dirty word to be transgender. I was treated relatively cruelly by a lot of the people around me, or with people who just, weren't interested in learning more and were frightened of the different way that I was living my life. And so I was not facing any pressures to transition. Nobody was saying, hey, you should go on this thing. I was saying, hey, I think I'd be a lot less miserable if I had access to this medicine, this well-researched health care, but I was not able to access that care. But nobody was pushing me down that path.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Make sure you leave your witness form if you
Yes, I
didn't.
have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in opposition.
Hello, My name is Verity Tatum. My birth name is Nicholas Tatum. I'm an Iraq combat veteran. Finished my basic training here at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri in 2003. I did tour duty in 2005 as a combat engineer. I am here to oppose SB 26, SB 75, and SB 76. My brother Daniel also served as a Marine and passed away in 2007 on Christmas Eve. He was the only member of my family at the time that knew that I was trans and bisexual. During the early aughts, our military had a policy. It was called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Daniel and I often joked about whether or not he would turn me in. Into my parents, into the military, this was an awful joke, a bitter one, that both of us told to each other. And we'd laugh, a bit of gallows humor. I would have been removed from the military. I would have lost my family. When he passed away, I lost the brother that had known me almost every single year of my life. After his death in 2007, I became an American Gold Star sibling. My family became an American Gold Star family. An American Gold Star family member sits on the Veterans Affairs Committee in Washington, D.C. Imagine serving a country faithfully for a few years of your life and putting yourself in dangerous situations, searching for explosive devices, all while signing a blank check for the nation, with the hope that one day you, a trans citizen, will transition and finally feel relief for the first time in decades, or that your trans child will be able to transition because now you're in the military and you can get that good, sweet VA health care, and they'll be able to go in and get the hormones that they need in order to transition. I am shocked that Moon, someone that would sit on the Veterans Affairs Committee, the Military Affairs Committee here in Missouri, would push forward this kind of care,
Your time limit is up. Can you
Yeah,
wrap
sure.
up your comments? Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for the witness?
Thank you for your service to our nation, and I thank all the Gold Stars families for the sacrifice. One comment that my colleague said earlier was recognizing what you all fight for our liberties and for our continued freedoms. And when we talk about making sure that every individual can continue to pursue life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, how does this bill, I know this is a tough question, but how does this bill impact the ability for individuals to be able to seek that?
Oh, it heavily impacts us. There are 15,500 transgender military members currently serving, right? And if you're in the VA system like I am, there are 134,300 trans veterans today. 21% of transgender people have served our country in this capacity. 21. That's excuse me, hell of a number, all right? It's extremely patriotic,
Thank you
and
for-
I love it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Any other questions for the witness? See none. Thank you. Make sure you leave your witness form there on the desk. Next, in opposition.
Good morning. I am Amy Hammerman. I am a volunteer with National Council of Jewish Women, and I am a parent in Missouri. I don't have trans children. I have two cisgendered, heterosexual teenage boys, so also please pray for me. But I'm speaking as a parent because there's been a lot of talk about children not really being able to consent to this health care. And I will say that as a parent, we are charged with not just the legal responsibility, but the moral and ethical responsibility to give consent on behalf of our children. Parents across this country consent to medical procedures for their children that are inherently dangerous. They may be experimental. They may cause irreversible effects. I can think of a friend of mine who had to consent to experimental treatment for cancer for her child, and that child may well never be able to give birth to her own children someday. But those are the very difficult decisions that we make as parents. I see in this bill the worst kind of nanny state I can imagine as a parent, where, with due respect, this body is coming between me and my child's medical practitioners, my family, my clergy, in making decisions for our children. And I plead with you to reconsider this intrusive governmental overreach into the decisions made by parents. We have differences of opinion on everything from experimental treatments to vaccinations, and yes, gender-affirming care for trans children. And I urge you to vote no on moving this bill out of committee.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Next, in opposition.
I'm David Lee Brush with the Missouri Equity Education Partnership, and we are opposed to all three of these bills. I'm going to let medical experts and people with lived experience talk about what it means for them as transgender people and transgender caregivers. Our organization's position is that parents, patients, and providers are the people that should be making health care decisions for people in Missouri, not politicians. And furthermore, we are concerned that less than 2 years after the sunset was voted in and the grandfather clause was voted in, we're seeking now to eliminate it. It seems like the negotiations that were done were not done in good faith. And we are asking the Senate to stand by its collective word that these sunsets would remain in place. No matter why you chose to vote for it, you voted for the sunset. And so how can organizations come to you and talk to you and try to talk to you with good faith, knowing that you'll say anything to get it passed, and you'll vote for anything to get it out there, and then you'll change your minds? That's our concern, is that we're just asking you to stand by your collective word. Thank you so much.
Any questions for the witness? Senator Moon?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Were you in the negotiations for the two bills?
I was not. I was around in the building for the two bills, and I was talking to people who were part of the negotiations, and I thought the sunset was put on there to get the bill moving and get it moving forward, and also to be able to do research and to figure out if it was going to do harm. I think, spoiler alert, it is, but also to find out more information in the 4 years' time that we would have the sunset. And if we cut it short, we'll never know.
You mentioned an agreement. What was that agreement?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that the sunset was put in there. It felt like there was an agreement put into place, and everybody was like, we don't want the agreement, but we want the bill to move forward. So that seemed like compromise, which is what politics is about. But if people aren't going to stand by that compromise, then it seems like it diminishes the integrity of the body as a whole.
You say you felt like there was an agreement. There was no agreement.
Senator
made.
Moon, can you talk
I'm sorry,
closer
yes,
into the
please.
microphone? It's
I
hard
can't
to
hear you. Thank you.
Excuse me. Should I repeat everything I mentioned?
Please, just the last question.
Well, first I asked about the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
There was no agreement, and the agreement was to have the parts of the bill that remained today and the sunset. The first year after this bill was passed, Senate Bill 49, I should say, you can look back in the records. Legislation was filed to remove the sunset, and not a peep came out of anybody opposed to it at that time. Of course, it didn't make it to where we remove the sunset, but now where we have momentum, where the sunset is likely to be removed, people are coming out saying that an agreement has been broken, that agreement was not in place, that we would leave this for 4 years. There was no agreement broken, so I hope that you'll go back to your sources and correct them, because there was no agreement to leave this in.
Well, my understanding by reading the legislation and the bill is the sunset was put in place, and also if it came up a year later, there weren't public hearings for us to be able to come and talk about it, I don't think, last year, because I would have been here. So this is our first opportunity to be able to come and say, hey, don't remove the sunset that was put into place, that's written in statute now. But thank you so much. I will, and I should have clarified that my understanding was that this was put in place. Thank you.
Senator Lewis?
Thank you for being here. You just wanted to echo one of your comments. So one of my favorite things is knocking doors and getting to know my constituents. And what I heard time and time again is that healthcare decisions are personal, private decisions that should be up to the individual and their healthcare provider. Heard that a lot this summer, and so thank you for bringing that up. And then also, I find it interesting that oftentimes, we say parents know best in some instances, but not other instances. And you brought up a good a situation with like vaccines, you know, do they know best in those instances, but maybe not when it comes to transgender care. So,
Yeah, it seems like in Missouri, parents have rights until we don't want them to have rights.
yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are parents responsible for the upbringing of their children?
Yes.
What happens if you expose your kids to drugs or marijuana or other things that may have a detriment to them and they're minors?
Well, those aren't medical procedures, so that
No,
would,
but
that
it's
that we
this-
would be, I mean, as a mandated reporter, I would have to report, but they're not medical procedures.
Isn't it, I think, I'm just going to make a comment. This is why we're having this discussion, because if there is harm being done, it's worth the public discussion, is it not?
It is a public discussion that has provider input that says it's not as harmful as we think it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Nicola?
Ma'am, thank you for your testimony. I just want to make clear that today is my 5th week anniversary of being in the Senate, so I was not here.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No more questions for this witness. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Make sure you leave a witness form on the desk. Next, in opposition, are we? Okay, this will be the last one. Thank you.
Members of Congress, hi, my name is Taylor. I'm a transgender woman, and I'm here today from Wentzville, Missouri. I stand before you or sit as a parent of 5 wonderful children. I've been blessed with these children and have the privilege to see them grow up happy and healthy lives so far without overreach of the government. My oldest son currently serves in the U.S. Army. We are very proud of him. I would like to say that government overreach is something that nobody here wants. We've gone over this topic many times. And I'm hoping that by being able to speak here today, that I will prevent government overreach into our children's lives and making healthcare decisions based upon information provided by ideologies that are not medically driven. So I think we can also all agree that none of us wish our children to have any medical intervention required in their lives. Sadly, one of my children has not been so lucky and has been diagnosed with a disorder that impacts less than 1% of our population. At this time, I am very grateful that he is able to receive medical care, but I am very concerned that care such as this will be made illegal by government based upon religious or ideologies that are not based in the medical field. So I'm wondering, why are politicians making medical decisions for our children? Why is that not left to the doctors and the parents who are supposed to be the caregivers of these children? So I challenge you today to look in the mirror and ask yourself, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of freedom, or are you on a different side? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Senator Lewis?
I know you ran out of time. Did you have anything else you wanted to say, or did you get everything?
Just that as a transgender woman, I wish I would have had access to these drugs and treatments when I first said I was trans, which was in 5th grade.
Okay, and then I just want to, you know, we work here, we're here every day, and I know it's kind of, it's really challenging to come before us and tell your personal stories, especially talking about your children. So thank you for being here and being brave to come
Thank you.
in front of us.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thanks again.
With that, that concludes testimony in favor and in opposition to Senate Bill 75. We're going to move on. Any closing comments, Senator Hudson?
Just real quickly, Madam Chair, and you touched on this, smoking cigarettes, purchasing alcohol, gambling, sexual activity. There are some substances and activities that we all understand that children do not need to be exposed to. That's not government overreach, that's decency, and that's protecting kids. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our hearing for Senate Bill 75.